The champagne flutes caught the light from the chandelier as my sister Vanessa raised hers in a toast. Her fiancé Marcus Chen stood beside her in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his hand resting on the small of her back. The engagement party was everything Vanessa had dreamed of: white orchids everywhere, a string quartet in the corner, and enough guests to validate what she'd always believed, that she was the star of our family's story. To Marcus, my father boomed, his face flushed with pride and expensive scotch. The most successful man to ever join this family. I stood near the dessert table wearing a simple black dress I'd owned for years, holding my glass without drinking. Vanessa had seated me at the overflow table near the kitchen doors, close enough to be present, far enough to be forgettable. Marcus's eyes kept drifting toward me during the toasts. Not in an inappropriate way, but with a puzzled expression, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't balance. Each time, Vanessa would touch his arm, redirect his attention, pull him into another conversation with another impressed guest. During a lull in the festivities, Marcus excused himself and walked directly to me. "I'm sorry," he said, extending his hand. "We were introduced earlier, but I didn't catch what you do." Before I could answer, Vanessa appeared at his elbow, her smile bright and sharp as broken glass. "Oh, Elena just does some non-profit work," she said, her voice dripping with affection that felt rehearsed. "Nothing as impressive as what you do, obviously. She lives paycheck to paycheck, really. We've all offered to help, but you know how pride is." I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, not shame but something colder. Marcus's expression shifted slightly, something unreadable passing behind his eyes. "Non-profit work," he repeated, still looking at me. "Which organization?" "Marcus, honey, you haven't tried the salmon yet," Vanessa interrupted, threading her arm through his. "Come on, the caterer is the same one who did the governor's fundraiser." He allowed himself to be pulled away, but glanced back once more before disappearing into the crowd. I stepped outside onto the terrace, needing air that didn't smell like lilies and expensive perfume. The city stretched out below, lights blinking like scattered diamonds. I'd bought my parents this house 6 years ago when my mother's medical bills threatened to drown them. The down payment alone was $240,000. Vanessa had helped pick out the furniture. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital foundation. "The children's wing construction begins Monday. Your generosity will change lives. Thank you again for the $2 million commitment." I deleted it quickly, a habit formed from years of keeping my financial life private. Not from strangers, from my family. Growing up, I learned early that success made people uncomfortable when it came from the wrong daughter. When I got into MIT on a full scholarship, my mother threw Vanessa a consolation party, because she'd only gotten into state school. When I sold my first software company at 28 for 8 figures, my father told me not to mention it at Thanksgiving because Vanessa had just been passed over for a promotion at her marketing firm. "Don't make her feel small," my mother had said. "You know how sensitive she is." So I stayed quiet. I wore modest clothes, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and lived in a deliberately unimpressive apartment. I funded my parents' mortgage, paid for my father's surgery, covered Vanessa's credit card debt twice, and sent checks that were always cashed but never acknowledged. And Vanessa? She took credit. Told friends she'd supported the family through hard times. Posted on social media about sacrificing so much for the people I love. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? She looked the part. Designer clothes, expensive highlights, the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Back inside, dinner was being served. I returned to my table near the kitchen, where I'd been seated with my mother's book club friends and a couple I'd never met. From across the room I could hear Vanessa telling a story. "When my parents almost lost their house, I just couldn't let that happen," she was saying, her voice carrying over the string quartet. "I took out a personal loan, worked overtime for months. Family comes first, you know." Marcus was listening, his face attentive but unreadable. Several guests murmured their admiration. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. I cut into my salmon, each bite mechanical. This was the trade I'd made. Financial freedom for emotional invisibility. Most days I convinced myself it was worth it. Then Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, glanced at the screen and went completely still. His eyes widened slightly, then found me across the room with laser precision. He looked down at his phone again, then back at me. His jaw tightened. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The conversations nearby faltered. "Excuse me," he said to Vanessa, his voice carefully controlled. He walked straight toward my table, phone in hand, his expression transformed into something between shock and barely contained anger. "Elena," he said, my name sharp and clear in the sudden quiet. "Elena Reyes?" I looked up, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "Yes." He held out his phone. On the screen was an email from St. Catherine's Hospital Foundation. Subject line: Major Donor Recognition Event, Elena Reyes, benefactor of the new Children's Wing. "You're the donor who funded our Children's Wing?" His voice was loud enough that nearby tables stopped talking. "The $2 million commitment that saved the entire project?" The room was tilting into silence, one conversation at a time, like dominoes falling. I started, but he wasn't done. "I'm on the hospital board," Marcus continued, his voice rising with each word. "I've been working on this project for 2 years. We were going to shut down construction until an anonymous donor came through last month. That was you." Every eye in the room was on us now. The string quartet had stopped playing. Somewhere a wine glass clinked against a plate. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" Vanessa's voice cut through the silence as she rushed over, her heels clicking like gunshots. "Elena doesn't have that kind of money. She barely what?" Marcus turned to face her, his expression cold. "Lives paycheck to paycheck? Does some nonprofit work?" He looked back at me, then at Vanessa. "You said your family had no money when you met me. You said you paid for your parents' house. You said you'd sacrificed everything to keep them afloat." Vanessa's face drained of color so fast it startled me. I did help them. With what?" Marcus's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it worse. "The credit card debt your sister paid off? Twice, according to the Foundation's records, which list her as having made multiple significant family support payments when we ran her background check for the donation." My mother gasped. My father set down his scotch with a heavy thunk. "Marcus, you're embarrassing yourself," Vanessa tried, her voice shaking. Elena probably what?" He cut her off. "Probably sold a software company for $38 million 4 years ago? Probably sits on 3 corporate boards? Probably funded this entire house you told me you bought for your parents." The silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. "How did you?" "Because I asked," Marcus said simply. "The foundation did due diligence on our major donor. And when the name matched my fiancé's sister, the sister you told me was struggling, I asked more questions." He pulled up another email. "Want to know what else I learned? Elena funded your wedding. The one we're planning? The $85,000 you said you'd been saving for years? Your sister's accountant sent the deposit." "That's not," Vanessa's voice cracked. "You don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly," Marcus said, and something in his tone made the room feel smaller. He looked at my parents, who were frozen in their seats like statues. "You all let her do this. You all let her fund your lives while pretending she was the one who needed help." My mother found her voice. "Marcus, it's complicated. Vanessa has always been the golden child." Marcus finished. "The successful one. The one who gets the credit while her sister pays the bills." He turned back to Vanessa, and his face held no anger now, just disappointment. "You told me you valued honesty above everything. You told me your family taught you integrity." "I do value honesty," Vanessa whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to explain." "That you're a liar?" Marcus said quietly. He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket. He must have removed it while looking at his phone, and set it on the table between us. "I can't marry someone who built our entire relationship on fiction." "Marcus, please." Vanessa reached for him, but he stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry you had to deal with this for so long. And thank you for the Children's Wing. Those kids will never know your name, but they'll have a chance because of you." He walked out. Just like that. Through the silent crowd, past the untouched wedding cake display, past the life-size photo of him and Vanessa that stood near the entrance. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Vanessa turned to me, her makeup running, her perfect updo coming loose. "You ruined my life," she said, her voice breaking. You couldn't just let me have this one thing. I didn't say anything, I replied, my voice calmer than I felt. I never do. Exactly, she screamed. You never say anything. You just sit there being perfect and quiet and making everyone else look small. I paid for this party, Vanessa, I said quietly. I paid for this house. I paid your debts, your parents' medical bills, your car insurance. And I never asked for credit. I just asked not to be erased. My mother stood up, her face pale. Elena, you have to understand. Vanessa needs support. She's not as strong as you. Being strong isn't the same as being invisible, I said. I stood up, smoothed my simple black dress. I'm done being the secret benefactor in my own family's story. I walked out the same door Marcus had into the cool night air, leaving behind the champagne and the orchids and the fiction that had defined my family for decades. 3 months later, I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the children's wing. My name was on a plaque near the entrance. Elena Reyes, whose generosity makes healing possible. Hospital staff shook my hand. Board members thanked me. A little girl in a wheelchair smiled up at the bright, windowed space that would be her treatment room. Vanessa sent one text after that night. You could have warned me. I never responded. The truth is, I'd been warning her my whole life. Every time I stayed quiet, I was warning her that silence has a cost. Every time I paid without acknowledgement, I was warning her that debts accumulate, even invisible ones. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a scream. It's the sound of your own footsteps leaving the room. I didn't owe anyone a smaller version of myself just to keep the peace. And families built on denial always collapse eventually, usually under the weight of their own lies. If you've ever been the one holding your family together while they tore you apart, know this. Walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of freedom. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from people who claimed to love you?